Welcome, dear listener, and thank you for choosing to spend this quiet time with us. Tonight, we invite you into the peaceful world of Stillness Held in a Clay Cup, a gentle story designed to soothe your mind and guide you toward restful sleep. If you find comfort and calm in our stories, we warmly invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more peaceful escapes. Before we join Clara in her quiet studio, we'll begin with a short breathing guidance to help you settle in and release the day. Should you wish to drift directly into the story, please feel free to use the chapter timestamps found in the description below. Please find a position that feels deeply comfortable for you right now. Allow your body to feel heavy and supported, sinking softly into your bed or chair. Nestle into your blankets, adjusting your pillow until it feels just right. This is your sanctuary, a quiet space to simply be. Let go of any lingering thoughts or tensions from the day. Imagine the gentle quiet of Clara's studio, the soft light filtering through the window, the calm focus she finds in the simple act of shaping clay, the warmth held within a finished teacup. Now, let's take a slow, easeful breath together. Inhale gently through your nose, feeling the air fill your lungs softly, without effort, and exhale slowly through your mouth, perhaps with a quiet sigh, letting the breath carry away any tension. Feel your shoulders soften with the exhale, your jaw relaxing. With each easy inhale, invite a sense of calm. With each gentle exhale, release a little more of the day. Imagine the feeling of cool, smooth clay yielding under gentle pressure, or the comforting warmth spreading from a freshly brewed cup of tea held in your hands. If your mind wanders, gently guide it back to the sensation of your breath or the sound of my voice. There is nothing else you need to do but rest and listen. Allow the quiet rhythm of the story to envelop you, like the steady turning of the potter's wheel, grounding you in this peaceful present moment. Feel the stillness settling around you and within you. Let the simple beauty of everyday moments, the scent of damp earth, the soft clink of pottery, guide you towards tranquility. Prepare now to step into Clara's world, where patience is a virtue and peace is found in the gentle creation and appreciation of simple things. Let the stillness held within these moments cradle you as you drift towards sleep. Our story, Stillness Held in a Clay Cup, begins now. Chapter 1. Shaping the Quiet. The morning light filtered softly through the large, slightly dusty window of Clara's studio, painting elongated rectangles on the worn wooden floor. It was a quiet light, diffused by the thin layer of gray cloud that often blanketed the small town in the early hours. Outside, the world was slowly waking the distant rumble of the first bus, the cheerful, intermittent chirping of sparrows in the oak tree lining the quiet lane. But here, inside, a deep stillness held sway. The air itself felt thick with potential, carrying the cool, damp scent of earth that always clung to this space, the smell of possibility waiting within the bags of clay stacked neatly against one wall. Clara stood for a moment, simply breathing it in, letting the quietude settle over her like a familiar, comforting blanket. Her gaze drifted across the room, the sturdy potter's wheel standing patient and ready, the shelves lined with tools worn smooth by use, the drying racks holding pale, ghost-like forms from previous days. Each object seemed to hum with a quiet energy of its own. Today felt like a day for beginnings. She moved toward the bag of stoneware clay, the plastic crinkling softly in the quiet room. Kneeling, she dug her hands into the cool, yielding mass, scooping out a generous portion. The initial chill of the clay was always a small shock, but a welcome one, grounding her instantly in the physical world. She carried the heavy lump to her wedging board, a sturdy plaster slab that absorbed excess moisture, then began the rhythmic work of wedging, pushing the heel of her hand into the clay, folding it, turning it, pushing again. Thump, scrape, turn, thump, scrape, turn. The sound was a steady beat in the room's silence. It was a physical process, warming the clay in her muscles, but it was also meditative. With each fold, she worked out air bubbles, impurities, but also, it felt, the scattered thoughts and small anxieties that might have lingered from sleep. Her breathing deepened, synchronizing with the motion, her focus narrowing to the feel of the clay becoming smooth, pliable, consistent beneath her hands. She was no longer just Clara. She was an extension of this ancient process, preparing the earth for transformation. Finally satisfied with the clay's smooth, uniform texture, she shaped it into a neat cone and carried it to the wheel. Settling onto the stool, she centered the cone firmly on the wheel head, wetting her hands in the nearby bowl of water. A soft click, and the wheel began to spin with a low, gentle whirring sound, a soothing hum that filled the space. Clara rested her wet hands gently on the spinning clay, feeling its subtle wobbles, its resistance. Centering the clay was perhaps the most crucial step, demanding focus and a gentle, steady pressure. Her hands worked together, one bracing, one coaxing, feeling the clay respond, drawing it upwards into a tall cone, then pressing it back down into a compact mound again and again. Her body swayed slightly with the rhythm, her gaze fixed on the spinning form. The world outside, the town waking up, the list of things to do, had all receded. There was only the wheel, the clay, her hands, and the quiet hum. Slowly, steadily, the clay found its balance, spinning true and centered, a perfect, still point in the gentle motion. Now, the shaping could begin. With wet fingers, she opened the center of the mound, creating a hollow space. Then, gently, she began to pull the walls upward. Her touch was light but firm, feeling the clay thinning beneath her fingertips, guiding it, encouraging it to rise into the form she envisioned, a simple, comfortable cup. Not too large, not too small, with gently sloping sides that would feel good to hold. The wet clay slipped smoothly against her skin, cool and responsive. Water trickled down her wrists. Outside, a gentle rain began to patter against the window pane, adding another layer to the room's soft soundscape. She walked slowly, deliberately, appreciating the gradual transformation, the way the form emerged from the shapeless lump. There was no rush, only the quiet conversation between potter and material. She paused occasionally, dipping her hands back into the water, smoothing the rim, refining the curve. Dust motes danced in the beam of light from the window, catching the faint spray thrown by the wheel. When the form felt right, balanced and pleasing to the eye and the imagined touch, she slowed the wheel. With a damp sponge, she smoothed the surfaces one last time, removing throwing rings, leaving only a subtle texture. Then, taking her cutting wire, she held it taut, close to the base, and drew it smoothly underneath the cup, severing it cleanly from the wheel head. Lifting it carefully with steady hands, she placed the newly formed cup onto a clean wooden board. It sat there, damp and vulnerable, yet holding the promise of future warmth, of quiet moments of contemplation. She looked at it, this simple vessel born from earth and water, and quiet intention. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a release of focused breath. The rain outside had softened to a whisper. In the quiet studio, surrounded by the gentle scent of clay and rain-washed air, Clara felt a profound sense of peace settle within her, as tangible and grounding as the clay itself. Another small beginning shaped in the quiet. Chapter 2. The First Firing's Glow. Several days had passed. The gentle rain had given way to periods of soft sunshine that slanted through the studio window, warming patches of the floor and accelerating the drying process. The simple cup Clara had thrown, along with a few companions made in subsequent quiet sessions, now stood on the drying rack, their color lightened from deep gray to a pale, chalky dove gray. They felt different to the touch now, no longer cool and yielding, but dry, slightly dusty, and surprisingly light. They were in the bone-dry stage, exceedingly fragile, holding their form but brittle like a held breath. Clara handled them with immense care, her movements slow and deliberate as she inspected each one, gently smoothing any tiny imperfections with a soft brush. The air in the studio held the dry, earthy scent of thoroughly parched clay. Today was the day for the first transformation, the bisque firing. Loading the small electric kiln was a quiet ritual in itself. Clara opened the heavy, insulated lid, revealing the clean, empty space within, coiled heating elements lining the walls like dormant serpents. She carefully placed kiln posts and shelves, creating layers, ensuring air could circulate freely. Then, one by one, she positioned the bone-dry cups on the shelves, making sure none were touching each other or the kiln walls. It felt like arranging sleeping forms, tucking them in for a long, transformative journey. Each placement required careful thought, ensuring stability and even heat exposure. The clink of ceramic shelf against post was a clear, sharp sound in the otherwise still room. Once loaded, she checked everything one last time before closing the heavy lid with a soft thud. The kiln sat squat and solid, a silent container of imminent change. Clara moved to the control panel, its digital display dark. She programmed the firing schedule, a slow, gentle ramp-up of temperature, holding points to allow moisture to escape safely. Then a steady climb to the target bisque temperature, just over 1,000 degrees Celsius. With the settings confirmed, she pressed the start button. A quiet click echoed in the room, followed by a low, almost imperceptible hum as the kiln drew power. There were no flames, no smoke, just this quiet electrical energy beginning its slow work. For the first few hours, the changes would be invisible, intangible, happening deep within the clay structure as residual water turned to steam and vented away. Clara placed a hand briefly on the kiln's exterior. It was still cool to the touch. Patience was the key now. A rushed firing could shatter the fragile ware. The afternoon unfolded gently, with the kiln humming softly in the background, a constant, low, thrumming note. Clara settled into her worn armchair by the window. She picked up a book, its pages softened with age, the scent of paper and time rising faintly as she opened it, but her eyes kept drifting from the words to the window pane. Outside, the oak leaves rustled in a light breeze, dappled sunlight playing across Mr. Henderson's neat garden next door. She saw him for a moment, wearing his familiar old hat, quietly weeding amongst his rose bushes, his movements unhurried and peaceful. A silent wave passed between them, a simple acknowledgement of shared quietude. The hum of the kiln seemed to blend with the gentle sounds from outside, creating a soothing soundscape. Hours passed. The light shifted, turning golden as the afternoon wore on. Clara occasionally got up to check the kiln's temperature display, noting the steady, incremental climb. A faint warmth now radiated from its surface, noticeable if you held your hand close. The air near the kiln shimmered slightly. As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in soft hues of lavender and rose, the kiln reached its peak temperature. It held there for a short while, ensuring every piece was evenly heated before beginning its long, slow cool-down phase. The humming sound persisted, but the intense heat generation ceased. Now, the waiting continued, perhaps the most crucial part. Opening the kiln too soon could cause thermal shock, cracking the newly hardened pottery. Clara made herself a simple supper, eating quietly at her small table, the kiln's presence a warm, silent companion in the darkening room. Later, wrapped in a soft shawl, she sat again by the window, watching the stars emerge one by one in the deep blue sky. The kiln ticked softly now and then as it cooled, metallic clicks echoing the cooling of the earth outside. It wasn't until the following morning, when the kiln was completely cool to the touch, that Clara finally lifted the lid. A wave of dry, residual warmth washed over her face, carrying a faint, clean, baked earth smell. Inside, the cups sat transformed. Their color was now a warmer, pinkish tan, and they looked denser, more solid. Carefully, using protective gloves as the shelves were still slightly warm, she began unloading. She picked up the first cup, the one she'd made on that rainy morning. It felt solid, permanent, in a way the fragile greenware never had. Tapping it gently with a fingernail produced a clear, resonant ting, the sound of fired ceramic, of clay turned to stone. It was no longer just dried mud. It had undergone its first fire trial, emerging strong and porous, ready for the next stage, ready for glaze. Holding the warm bisqued cup in her hands, feeling its new strength and permanence, Clara felt a quiet echo of that transformation within herself, a sense of resilience found in patience and gentle heat. Chapter 3. Glazing in Morning Light. The studio was bathed in the clear, bright light of a new morning. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the myriad of dust motes that danced perpetually in the air, turning them into tiny, glittering diamonds. The bisqued cups sat neatly arranged on a clean work surface, their warm, porous surfaces seeming to soak up the light. They felt solid and ready, waiting for their final adornment. Today was glazing day, a day of quiet precision and subtle alchemy. Clara surveyed her collection of glazed materials, jars of powders and earthy tones, containers of liquid medium, an assortment of soft brushes resting handles up in a ceramic pot. The process required a calm hand and focused attention, a meditative state quite different from the rhythmic energy of throwing. She decided on a simple glaze, one she mixed herself, a base hinting at the color of moss after rain, with subtle variations that the fire might bring out. Measuring the dry ingredients felt like following an ancient recipe. Scoops of feldspar, kaolin, silica, and small amounts of coloring oxides weighed carefully on a small digital scale. The soft swoosh of powder pouring into a mixing bowl was one of the few sounds. She added water slowly, stirring gently with a whisk, avoiding introducing too many air bubbles. The powder gradually incorporated, transforming into a smooth, creamy liquid the color of pale jade. The process was methodical, unhurried, She tested the consistency, dipping a finger in. The glaze coated it evenly, dripping slowly. Satisfied, she strained it through a fine sieve into a wider container, ensuring a perfectly smooth blend free of any lump. The scent in the air was minimal, just the clean, slightly mineral smell of the wet glaze components. Selecting the first cup, the one whose journey began on that rainy morning, Clara held it gently. Its bisqued surface felt slightly rough, receptive. She wiped it carefully with a damp sponge to remove any dust, ensuring the glaze would adhere perfectly. Then, holding the cup firmly by its base, she dipped it smoothly into the container of moss-green glaze. She submerged it completely for a brief moment, then lifted it out with a steady hand, letting the excess glaze drip back into the container with soft, viscous plops. The cup emerged coated in a uniform, opaque layer of pale green liquid. The transformation was immediate, the porous bisque eagerly absorbing the moisture, leaving a powdery matte surface as it quickly dried. The color was soft, unassuming, holding the secret of the glossy sheen that the fire would later reveal. Clara placed the dipped cup carefully back on the work surface. The next step required precision, cleaning the base. Glaze on the bottom of a pot would fuse it permanently to the kiln shelf during firing. Using a small, damp sponge, she meticulously wiped every trace of glaze from the foot ring and the flat base, leaving the clean, tan-colored bisque exposed. Her movements were careful, economical, her breathing slow and even. She worked steadily, cup by cup, dipping, dripping, wiping. The repetitive nature of the task was calming, allowing her mind to settle into a state of quiet focus. Outside the window, the sounds of the day unfolded gently, the distant drone of a lawnmower starting up somewhere down the street, the cheerful chatter of birds in the oak tree, the occasional soft rumble of a passing car. These sounds drifted in, acknowledged but not distracting, part of the peaceful backdrop to her work. For a few of the cups, she decided on a subtle variation. Using a fine brush, she dipped it into a darker accent glaze, perhaps a soft, earthy brown, and carefully painted a simple line around the rim, or added a few delicate brush strokes near the base, like blades of grass. The brush moved silently across the powdery surface, leaving its darker trace. It wasn't about creating intricate patterns, but about adding a small touch of individuality, a quiet detail that might catch the light later. She admired the effect, the contrast between the soft green and the subtle brown accent. The sunlight streaming in made the powdery surfaces glow softly. Looking at the row of coated cups, waiting patiently now for their final journey into the heat, Clara felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. Each one held a promise, a potential beauty, yet to be fully realized. The glazing complete, she carefully cleaned her tools, rinsing brushes, wiping down surfaces, restoring order to her workspace. The studio settled back into its quiet rhythm, the glazed cups standing like patient sentinels in the gentle morning light, ready for the fire's embrace. Chapter 4. The warmth of the first brew. The kiln had cooled once more, its cycle complete. This time, the anticipation felt different, not just the transformation from fragile clay to porous bisque, but the final reveal, the unveiling of color and sheen locked beneath the powdery coat of glaze. Clara approached the kiln with a quiet sense of expectation. Lifting the heavy lid released a familiar wave of dry warmth. But this time, the sight within was subtly different. The cups no longer looked chalky and pale. They glowed with a soft, vitreous luster. The moss-green glaze had matured into a deep, gentle hue, slightly darker in the crevices, lighter on the raised edges, giving each piece a unique, subtle variation. The simple brown accents she had painted now appeared as warm, earthy lines, perfectly complementing the green. Carefully, she lifted out the first cup, the one she had followed from the beginning. It felt wonderfully different in her hands now, heavier than the bisque, smoother, with a satisfying density. The glaze was cool and sleek to the touch, like a water-worn pebble found on a riverbank. She turned it slowly, admiring the way the light caught the gentle curves, the slight pooling of the glaze near the base, creating a deeper shade of green. It felt complete, balanced, ready. There was a quiet integrity to it, a testament to the earth, water, heat, and patient hands that had shaped it. She ran a finger around the smooth rim, then felt the clean, unglazed foot ring a grounding connection back to the fired clay beneath the surface sheen. A soft smile touched Clara's lips. It was simple, unassuming, yet held a quiet beauty she found deeply satisfying. This called for a celebration, albeit a quiet one. It was time for the cup's true purpose to be fulfilled. Clara carried the new cup to the small kitchenette area adjacent to her studio space. She filled her kettle with fresh water, the sound of the running tap clear and bright. Placing it on the stove, she turned on the burner, listening for the soft click and the low hiss as the flame ignited. While the water heated, she opened a familiar tin, releasing the delicate, fragrant aroma of dried chamomile flowers. She spooned a generous pinch of the pale yellow blossoms into a small stainless steel tea infuser. The scent was calming in itself, sweet and herbaceous, promising peace. The kettle began to murmur, a gentle crescendo, building towards a soft whistle. Clara turned off the heat just before the full boil, letting the water settle for a moment. She placed the infuser into the new moss-green cup. Then, slowly and deliberately, she poured the hot water over the chamomile flowers. Steam rose instantly, carrying the intensified fragrance through the air. The water swirled around the blossoms within the infuser, beginning to take on a pale golden hue. Clara watched the gentle dance of the flowers steeping, the color deepening moment by moment. She let it sit for a few minutes, allowing the chamomile to fully release its gentle essence. The rising steam warmed her face slightly as she leaned closer, inhaling the soothing aroma. Finally, she lifted the infuser out, placing it on a small saucer. The brewed tea now a beautiful clear gold within the green cup. Clara carried the cup carefully back towards her armchair by the window. She settled in, cradling the cup in both hands. The warmth seeped through the ceramic, a gentle, comforting heat spreading into her palms, grounding her. It wasn't just the heat of the tea. It felt like the residual warmth of the kiln, the memory of its fiery transformation held within the smooth glaze. She brought the cup closer, inhaling the steam one last time before taking the first sip. The tea was soft, floral, and deeply warming. It flowed down, easing away any lingering tension in her shoulders. She held the cup, feeling its weight, its smooth surface, the gentle curve fitting perfectly into her hands. Outside, the afternoon light was mellowing, casting long shadows from the oak tree. Mr. Henderson was gently watering his plants, the arc of water from his can catching the light like scattered diamonds. Clara took another slow sip, the warmth spreading through her chest. This simple act, drinking warm tea from a cup made by her own hands, felt profoundly peaceful. It was a culmination, a connection, a small perfect moment of stillness held right here, cradled in clay and warm. Chapter 5. Reflection by the Windowsill. The cup felt perfectly at home in Clara's hands, its gentle warmth a constant soothing presence. She sat nestled in her armchair, positioned just so, allowing her a clear view through the large studio window. The chamomile tea, still releasing faint tendrils of steam, filled the air with its soft, apple-like fragrance. Each sip was a small anchor, bringing her back to the present moment, to the simple comfort of warmth and flavor. Outside, the late afternoon light had softened further, bathing the quiet lane and Mr. Henderson's garden in a gentle golden glow. The rain from earlier seemed a distant memory, leaving behind a clean freshness in the air and glistening droplets on the leaves of the oak tree. Clara watched as a small robin hopped onto the edge of Mr. Henderson's bird bath, dipping its head quickly for a drink before flitting away. Her gaze returned to the cup she held. She traced the subtle texture where the glaze met the unglazed foot ring, a reminder of the raw earth beneath the smooth surface. She thought about the journey of this small vessel, the initial shaping from a cool, yielding lump of clay, the patient drying, the first intense heat of the bisque firing that gave it strength, the careful application of the glaze, and the final transformative fire that brought forth this deep, mossy green. It felt like holding a small piece of captured time, a testament to slow processes and quiet attention. There was no grand statement in its design, just a simple, honest form meant for holding warmth, for facilitating moments of quiet contemplation, just like this one. It was enough, more than enough. Mr. Henderson finished his watering, coiling his hose with practiced, unhurried movements. He straightened up, catching Clara's eye as she sat by the window. He offered a small, gentle smile and a slight nod, which she returned. No words were needed. Their shared appreciation for the quiet rhythm of the afternoon, for the simple acts of tending and creating, formed a silent, comfortable understanding between neighbors. He disappeared around the side of his house, leaving the garden looking peaceful and cared for in the waning light. Clara took another sip of tea. The warmth felt grounding, spreading a sense of ease through her body. She noticed the slight weight of the cup in her hands, the smoothness of the glaze against her fingertips. These simple sensory details were anchors, keeping her thoughts from drifting too far, holding her gently in the here and now. She reflected on the process, not just of making this cup, but of the rhythm of her days in the studio, the gentle whir of the wheel, the scrape of tools, the quiet hum of the kiln, the satisfying clink of finished pieces. These were the sounds of her contentment. The feel of clay in its various states, the scent of damp earth and warm ceramics, the visual feast of light and shadow playing across her workspace. These were the textures of her peace. It wasn't an escape from the world, but rather a way of engaging with it more deeply, more mindfully, finding beauty and meaning in the deliberate slowness, in the shaping of simple, useful things. The stillness wasn't empty. It was full, rich, with sensation and quiet observation. The tea was cooling now, the last vestiges of warmth lingering in the ceramic. The light outside was beginning to fade, the shadows deepening, promising the transition to evening. Clara finished the last sip, the floral taste gentle on her tongue. She held the empty cup for a moment longer, feeling its comfortable weight, its smooth coolness now replacing the warmth. It had served its purpose for today, offering comfort and facilitating this quiet pause. She rose slowly from her chair, feeling relaxed and centered. Carrying the cup back to the kitchenette, she rinsed it gently under cool water, the green glaze gleaming under the flow. She placed it carefully on a drying rack, ready for its next use. The studio was quiet again, settling into the soft light of dusk. Clara felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet joy found not in grand achievements, but in the simple, mindful rhythm of creation and appreciation, a stillness held, captured, and savored, one clay cup at a time.